Welcome to today's deep dive. I want you to imagine opening a history book about your own family.
Okay, I'm with you.
You turn the pages, right, and you're excited to read about your grandparents or, the struggles your family overcame, the core values you hold dear.
Right, the stuff that makes your family who they are.
Exactly. But as you start reading, the details feel, well, completely wrong. You look at the author's note and realize the entire book was written by strangers.
Oh, wow, yeah. That would be unsettling.
Yeah, people who maybe walked past your house once, glanced through your living room window, and then just went home and decided they were the absolute authorities on who your family is.
Just based on a passing glance.
Right. And they misunderstood your traditions, highlighted all the wrong failures, and completely erased your biggest achievements.
The frustration of that realization would be immense. But what makes the sources we are looking at today so urgent is that we aren't just talking about fixing a few dusty encyclopedias on a shelf somewhere.
No, we are definitely not. Today's deep dive is an exploration of a really fascinating initiative called the African Record, which is all about building the digital memory of a continent.
Right, and it's dealing with that exact stranger looking through the windows scenario you just described,
Yeah.
but on a massive continental scale. And it's colliding head-on with the rise of artificial intelligence.
Okay, let's unpack this. The mission laid out in these documents is incredibly ambitious. It is basically about how a continent is racing to reclaim its historical narrative in the digital age.
Shifting from being a passive subject,
Yeah.
constantly written about and analyzed by outsiders, to actually becoming the author of its own future.
Right. But before we get to the solution they are building, we have to look at the immediate threat. Because the sources draw this really direct line between the flawed history of the past and the technology of the future.
What's fascinating here is that we have to understand the mechanics of how artificial intelligence actually gets, well, smart.
Right, how it learns.
Exactly. And AI doesn't have an innate sense of truth. It relies entirely on statistical probability based on the data it has ingested.
So it only knows what we feed it.
Precisely. And for generations, the vast majority of digitized text, historical analysis, and global media concerning Africa has been generated by foreign observers, colonial administrators, or, external NGOs.
Wait, isn't AI supposed to be objective? I always assumed it was this cold, calculating, neutral arbiter of facts.
That's a huge misconception. When you feed an AI model 1 billion data points, where Africa is primarily framed through a lens of deficit, struggle, or external intervention, the model mathematically assumes that is the baseline reality.
Oh, I see. It's like a bad game of telephone, right?
Yeah.
But the machine isn't just accidentally distorting a message. It's more like a polluted reservoir.
A polluted reservoir is a great way to put it.
Because if the informational water supply has been tainted by external bias for 100 years, the AI isn't a new clean spring. It is just a highly efficient pump pulling from that exact same tainted reservoir.
Yeah, and now it's pumping it into every school, smartphone, and business in the entire world. That analogy captures the severity of the crisis perfectly.
It's pretty terrifying when you think about it.
The AI acts as an amplifier, locking in those biases permanently. And the real danger highlighted in our sources is the compounding effect.
What do you mean by the compounding effect?
Well, when future generations use these AI systems to learn about African history or politics or economics, they will inherit a highly polished, incredibly confident version of that distorted understanding.
Because the AI sounds so sure of itself.
Exactly. The technology threatens to cement a foreign-authored narrative so deeply into the digital bedrock that it becomes, almost impossible to uproot later.
Which brings us to this core, pivotal question posed in the text, and it completely stops you in your tracks. The source asks, and I'm quoting here, "If we do not document ourselves, who will teach the future who we are?"
It shifts the entire paradigm. I mean, you can't just write op-eds complaining that the algorithm is biased.
Right, complaining doesn't rewrite the code.
Exactly. Complaining doesn't change the statistical weighting of a large language model. The only way to change the output is to fundamentally change the training data. You need a massive structural intervention.
And that intervention is the African Record.
Yes, exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The text describes this as the construction of historical infrastructure. I really want to pause on that phrase because it is brilliant.
It's a very intentional choice of words by the authors.
Yeah, because when I hear infrastructure, my mind immediately goes to concrete. I think of highways, power grids, water treatment plants, the physical things a city needs so it doesn't just collapse.
Right, the tangible foundation.
But the argument here is that a society needs foundational architecture, for its collective memory and truth just as much as it needs pavement.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, if you don't have a reliable, structured way to document your reality, your society's foundation is just as vulnerable as a city with no bridges.
Exactly. So what does this historical infrastructure actually look like?
The source material breaks it down into three load-bearing pillars. There's the historical record, political accountability, and civic justice.
Okay, 3 pillars.
And what is crucial to understand is the mechanism of how these three interact. This isn't a passive library where scholars go to quietly read about the past.
So it's not just an archive of old documents.
No, the African record is explicitly described as a living archive. It is an active defense system.
Let's pull the mechanics of that apart for a second. How does a historical record practically function as an active defense system? To me, a record is just a file in a cabinet somewhere.
Well, think about the mechanics of civic justice. You cannot demand restitution, or prosecute a corrupt official, or protect marginalized land rights without undeniable proof.
Right, you need the receipts.
You need the receipts. The evidence has to exist, and it has to be protected from tampering. In this living archive, power is documented in real time.
Oh, I get it. So if a political leader makes a specific promise about infrastructure funding, or if a corporation displaces a local community, that data is captured, verified, and secured immediately.
Exactly. It's secured, so it can't just mysteriously disappear 5 years later.
I see. So the historical record isn't just for museums, it is the actual ammunition for political accountability.
Yes, because you can't hold a leader accountable tomorrow if you don't have the ironclad, immutable record of what they actually did today.
That makes total sense. It creates an ecosystem where investigative journalism actually has teeth, because the reporters have a secure platform where their evidence is preserved and accessible.
And the sources are very clear that the voices of ordinary, often forgotten citizens are the primary focus of this documentation.
Not just the politicians and the elites.
Right. It is about building a multi-layered data set of the truth from the ground up rather than the top down. But, to build infrastructure on that scale, you need a highly specialized workforce.
Which leads to the actual physical rollout of this vision, because you can't just drop the blueprints for a massive archival bridge and expect it to, well, build itself.
No, you need builders.
Exactly. And the sources detail the launch of the Myschool Academy African Record Fellowship. They are actively recruiting human capital to populate this living archive.
It is a targeted 3-month program. They are seeking a small cohort of exceptional fellows from across the continent.
But what really stands out in the documentation isn't just the fact that they are recruiting, it's specifically who they are recruiting. The net they are casting is unusually wide.
Very wide.
So what does this all mean? Because I was actually quite skeptical when I first read the recruitment list.
Skeptical how?
Well, they were looking for journalists, student journalists, and historians. That part makes total sense. If you're building a historical record, hire a historian.
Potentially.
But then the list just keeps going. They explicitly want political science students, law students, researchers, economists, human rights advocates, media investigators, and international affairs students.
It's a very diverse group.
Right. My immediate thought was, if your goal is to build an archive of history, why do you need an economist? Isn't that mission creep?
This raises an important question. It definitely looks like mission creep until you realize they are fundamentally redefining what constitutes history in the digital age.
Redefining history. Okay, how so?
Go back to those 3 pillars we talked about. To achieve civic justice, a traditional historical narrative just isn't enough anymore. You need people who understand the mechanics of power.
Right, because power is complicated.
Exactly. A law student knows how to track subtle shifts in legislative precedent or zoning laws, things that a traditional historian might overlook entirely.
Okay, I am starting to see the matrix here. A historian might interview citizens and write a brilliant paper about how a specific neighborhood was marginalized over 20 years.
Yes.
But an economist can pull the banking data, the municipal tax records, and the budget allocations from 20 years ago. They can definitively prove exactly how that neighborhood was systematically denied capital.
You nailed it. The economist provides the hard data to back up the human narrative.
Oh, that's powerful.
It really is. A human rights advocate documents the reality of power dynamics and abuses in a structured way that an international affairs student can then contextualized globally.
So by bringing all these different disciplines into the fellowship, the African record ensures that the Living Archive isn't just a collection of stories.
No, it becomes a comprehensive, multi-layered, interlocking data set.
But that brings up a massive logistical question for me. They only have 3 months with these fellows. 3 months. Honestly, what can you realistically achieve in 12 weeks?
It sounds incredibly brief.
Right. We are talking about reclaiming the history of an entire continent and correcting the global AI data set. 3 months feels like trying to empty the ocean with a teacup.
The source material acknowledges that urgency. They detail a highly intensive, specialized curriculum. They aren't just sitting around discussing abstract historical theory.
So what are they actually doing?
It is essentially a tactical boot camp for data extraction and preservation.
A tactical boot camp. I like that.
Yeah, the fellows are taught how to conduct rigorous investigative research, properly preserve the chain of custody for evidence, build timeline-based archives, and produce high-impact public interest reports.
And they are backing this up with real incentives, right?
Yes, the initiative provides tangible support. Outstanding fellows receive benefits worth over $500, plus ongoing opportunities to work as researchers, editors, and investigative contributors.
Okay, but the curriculum also includes this fascinating tactical choice. Woven into all of this training, they're explicitly teaching these fellows how to use AI-assisted research tools.
Yes, they are leaning into the technology.
When I read that, I had a real moment of whiplash. I mean, we just spent the first half of this deep dive talking about how artificial intelligence is the looming existential threat to their history.
It seems like a paradox.
Totally. Now they are training their journalists and economists to use it. It's like fighting fire with fire. It feels like giving the steering wheel to the car that just ran you over.
It does seem contradictory on the surface, but it is actually a brilliant mechanical strategy. The initiative understands that you cannot outpace a machine using manual labor alone.
Right, the scale is just too massive.
Exactly. If foreign algorithms are scraping and generating biased data at a rate of millions of words a minute, a human historian writing one book a year will never, ever change the statistical weight of the internet.
Ah, okay, so they're using the AI to flood their own reservoir.
In a sense, yes. The fellows use AI tools for massive data processing. Imagine having thousands of handwritten local court documents or municipal ledgers in various indigenous languages.
That would take humans decades to sort through.
But you use AI-assisted tools for rapid optical character recognition, instant translation, and data structuring. You leverage the technology to process, verify, and digitize raw local truth at an unprecedented speed.
Wow. So you aren't letting the AI write the history. You are using the AI to force high-quality, locally sourced data into the open web so rapidly that the global large language models literally have to ingest it.
You essentially build an algorithmic counterweight. You overwhelm the legacy data with new, verified truth.
That is an incredibly proactive way to flip the narrative. You aren't hiding from the technology, you are weaponizing it to build your own infrastructure faster.
And that brings the source material to its ultimate conclusion, grounding the entire initiative in the immediate present. The text bluntly states, history is being written right now.
Right
Now. It is a reminder that the window of opportunity is incredibly narrow. As AI models solidify their foundational training data over the next few years, the baseline reality of the digital world is being set in stone.
So it's now or never.
Basically. The initiative poses a stark binary choice. Will Africa continue to be written by others, or will Africans write Africa's story themselves?
So the invitation to join the Myschool Academy Fellowship is basically an invitation to step onto the battlefield.
It really is.
It's an invitation to help preserve the past, hold current power accountable, protect the truth, and physically encode the digital memory for generations to come before the algorithmic cement dries.
It is a monumental undertaking. But the documentation shows they have broken it down from a lofty ideal into actionable structural mechanics.
Yeah, they really have a solid plan.
They identified the threat of AI bias, designed the 3 pillars of historical infrastructure to counteract it, and are now actively training the multidisciplinary human workforce required to build it.
I want to take a second to talk directly to you, the listener, about why this matters, regardless of where you live or what field you work in.
It's a universally relevant issue.
It really is. You might not be based in Africa, and you might not be an investigative journalist or an economist, but the challenge we've unpacked today is universal.
Absolutely.
The AI systems that are currently scraping the internet to learn about Africa are the exact same AI systems that are learning about your hometown, your industry, your local culture, and your family's history.
The vulnerability of digital memory isn't isolated. The question of who gets to define reality and what data the machines use to understand the world is arguably the defining technological challenge of this decade.
Which leaves you with a final, somewhat provocative thought to ponder on your own. We've seen the detailed mechanics of how the African record is building this robust, locally sourced historical infrastructure, using economists to verify data, law students to track accountability, and AI tools to digitize truth at scale.
Right.
If this massive undertaking succeeds and they actually manage to permanently encode their true history into the digital consciousness of the future, could this become the ultimate global blueprint?
That is the big question.
Could every marginalized community, every forgotten demographic, or every local culture use this exact same three-pillar model to aggressively document their own reality before the algorithmic window closes for good?
It's a powerful possibility.
Because ultimately, no one wants to find out that the history of their own life was written entirely by strangers looking through the window.